Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Thanks so much for being here today. We got a kind of a special show for you. It's a special time of the year, so we should do special shows. A special time of the year, I just want to say for two reasons. Of course, we are in the Advent season. We are anticipating Christmas Day coming up. But there's a special anticipation this year because on Christmas Eve, we start a Jubilee. And since the year 1300, at first it was every 50 years, and now it's every 25 years, the Catholic Church celebrates a Jubilee year. And I have become aware, as maybe if you've listened at all, you've noticed in recent weeks, of the fact that we have not made enough of the Jubilee year. Jubilee years are a big deal. And they're a big part of the life of the church. And so that's coming up. If you can find out all about it, they have a website for the Jubilee year. There's materials at our website. You can go to the United States Catholic Bishops. Probably your parish has information on the Jubilee year. But it's something to know about and something to keep in mind. We are on the verge of a big Jubilee, every 25-year Catholic Jubilee. In Rome, that'll mean, opening the holy doors and all kinds of things. But the graces of the Jubilee year are meant for everyone, Catholic and non-Catholic, for every person around the world. And so we're getting closer. Another thing about this time of the year is people watch a lot of movies. And let's call it our semi-annual movie show. That's what we're going to do this hour. That seems about right. Since we've done it twice in the last 6 months, I've decided to christen it our semi-annual movie show, and we're going to talk about movies this hour and next hour with our guest, Andrew Petiprin, a former Anglican priest. He and his family came into the Catholic Church about 5 years ago, I guess, and he's a wonderful interlocutor on all things movie. He's one of the authors of Popcorn with the Pope, a guide to the Vatican film list, a book you should get, especially if you love movies. Popcorn with the Pope, a guide to the Vatican film list. He's a columnist at the Catholic World Report. He's the host of the Ignatius Press podcast, and he's the co-founder of the Spe Salvi Institute. Andrew Petiprin, thank you very much for being here with us.
Great to be back, Cy. How are you?
I am very well. I'm, as you can tell, fired up about the Jubilee year coming. I feel like we should have probably paid more attention earlier to the Jubilee year coming.
Stuff like that's great. Does the Jubilee mean all our debts are going to be forgiven, like in the Bible?
Yes, you don't have to pay your credit card bill anymore.
I'm kind of banking on that. That's kind of my financial strategy right now, Cy.
Well, let me tell you, good luck with that. All right, best of luck to you with that. I don't think there are any world governments currently recognizing the Jubilee year. Although I do remember in the Jubilee of 2000, Pope John Paul got caught up in the movement to forgive third world debt. I don't know if you remember that. That was part of the movement of the Jubilee of the year 2000.
Vaguely. I wasn't Catholic back then, and I was caught up in my own kind of young student life, so I probably didn't remember that. But that's interesting.
All right. Well, so you still watch movies? You're a father.
Yeah.
You're busy. You got all those jobs but you still watch movies.
I try to watch as many movies as I can. Although I have to say, Cy, 2024 was not a super great year for movies. But maybe we'll get into that.
Well, yeah. Let's start there, as a matter of fact, because sometimes it's exciting to get to you're going. Oh, we're going to do the movie show. There's this and there's that and there's all these things. It doesn't feel like that this year, and I'm interested to hear you say it because I guess there's a confirmation in that. Like, yeah, it was kind of a dull. I honestly don't remember the last time I sat in a movie theater. I just nothing has drawn me into the movie theater.
Yeah, I've been a few times this year, and but I have to say, 2019 was in my mind the last year where I can think of where I really enjoyed a lot of movies at the movie theater that were new movies. That was a year that like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out. That's the year that 1917 came out, Ford versus Ferrari. There were a whole bunch of good movies that year. And ever since COVID and coming out of it, there have been a few. There have been a few each year. I mean, last year we had what was it called? Barbenheimer, right? We had Barbie and Oppenheimer come out.
Right.
And that was supposed to be the big event of 2023. 2024, they tried to make a big to-do out of Wicked. Maybe we'll talk about that because I have seen that one.
Wicked
and also Gladiator Part 2, but I haven't seen that one. But, I don't really think it's the same. I mean, I think they're trying to make something out of nothing.
Of course.
There's just not a whole lot of great new movies coming out.
You are probably an innocent person, but I will just share. Marketing is a big part of what they do in Hollywood. If they can just,
I've heard that before.
yeah.
I think you're right. I think sometimes they try to tell us things are good when they're not. Imagine that.
Yeah, I didn't see either of those, Wicked or Gladiator 2. I honestly, in my mind, I often do this, like ranking of a movie when I see the trailer or the advert. Like I'm like, oh, like if I really am excited about it, I'm going to go to the theater and see that, and
Yeah.
then I immediately assign it to, I'll watch it on video, or
Yeah.
then I'll even assign them immediately when I see the trailer to. I'm not even going to watch that on video. I'm going to wait till it's on like network television or something, and I accidentally
Yeah.
catch it. I
Yeah.
was excited to see the movie Napoleon.
Yeah.
That was the last one I remember thinking I want to see that in the theater. It wasn't that good.
No, it
Wasn't a
wasn't. I
very
was
good
really
movie.
Ridley Scott. I mean, I was really excited about Napoleon. I think Joaquin Phoenix, he's a strange person, but he is a good actor. And
Wonderful,
Ridley
yeah.
Scott has made a lot of great movies, right? And
And
I mean, Napoleon,
Napoleon.
yeah,
Like,
talk about an interesting person to make a movie about. But I didn't like it at all. I thought it was not good from kind of a historical perspective, and it was just not good from an aesthetic perspective either. I wrote about it somewhere, but yeah, I was disappointed in Napoleon.
yeah, I mean, you almost feel like it's hard to make a bad movie about Napoleon, but somehow they managed. And I
Yeah,
guess one of the things about Napoleon, and this is why I thought Ridley Scott would do a good job with it, is he's very good at scale. Like a Ridley
yeah,
Scott movie can be grand, can be big, and cover huge. And there is no person in the modern era on the scale of Napoleon. None, zero. There are no other people on his scale. And
yeah,
as far as the scale of life, like the Napoleonic Code, you could you could write
yeah.
whole libraries just on that. And he just didn't manage it. He didn't pull it off. It wasn't there.
Yeah, I think that movie got really bogged down in kind of some, I don't know if it wasn't really direct, it was kind of indirect criticism of things like patriarchy and stuff like that, violence in writ large. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, it was just kind of a movie about, what a disaster one misguided man can create in the world. And well, I mean, yeah, that's sort of true about Napoleon, but I mean, that's a pretty small view, really,
Yeah.
of such an important historical figure. So
Right.
yeah, I didn't like it.
Right. What I hope someday, and I think I might have said this on the air with you before, but I don't have that many thoughts, so I recycle them. But somebody has to make a movie of the last few years of Napoleon's life, a real movie about the last few
Yeah.
years, because he converted to the Catholic faith and died a sincere Catholic, died in friendship with the Pope who he had imprisoned and who he hated. I mean, hated Pope
Yeah.
Pius VII. So that's the story. Ridley Scott is not qualified to tell, but
No.
I wish somebody would make that movie about Napoleon.
Yeah, calling all Catholic filmmakers. I know
Yeah.
a few of them. I hope somebody's maybe like working away on a screenplay somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I'll tell you what we'll do. The biggest movie of the year is probably, I don't know what it is. Actually, I'll have to ask you about that, but maybe Wicked. I know you've seen Wicked.
Yeah.
I know you haven't seen Gladiator 2. It looks exactly like Gladiator 1, except it's got Denzel Washington. I have to say, Denzel Washington has gotten me to see a lot of movies. So that's not
Yeah.
I don't treat that as a small thing. But other than that, it looks like the exact same movie. So I'm waiting for it on video.
Yeah, me too. That's definitely one of those that I put in the category of I'm not going to pay to see that in the movie theater unless circumstances sort of converge in such a way. That this happens to me from time to time. That did not happen with Gladiator 2, but I do anticipate I'm going to watch that at some point at home because like you, I do like Denzel Washington a lot. I think I think that despite Napoleon and a few other misfires by Ridley Scott, he still has it in him to make some pretty good movies. So I don't know, we'll see. But if you're ready to talk about Wicked a little bit, I'll just say Wicked is one of those movies I did end up not at all wishing to see in the movie theater,
But you did see
I
it.
ended up seeing it in anyway. Yeah.
All right, well,
And
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll leave that as the tease. We'll take the first break. We'll be back in about 60 seconds, and we'll get your take on Wicked, the movie, which I now understand is Wicked Part 1, which seems like a scam to me, but I'll ask you about it when we get back on the other side.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment. Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Are you ready to spread your wings? Wings is the weekly newsletter that's packed with exclusive news, program information, features, and updates of all that's going on at the Global Catholic Network. To sign up, go to EWTN.com, click subscribe, enter your name and email address, and you'll start getting your wings every week. Get your wings today. It's the weekly newsletter from EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Talking movies today, twice a year. Oh, yeah, at least we're up to twice a year. Maybe we'll get up to 4 times a year. We'll see. I don't know. I love talking with Andrew Petiprin, our guest. He's the author of Popcorn with the Pope, A Guide to the Vatican Film List. If you're Catholic and interested in movies at all, that's a book that you should have, Popcorn with the Pope. Check it out. And we're talking about the movies of this year. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about what's to come at the moment. Wicked. This was a huge Broadway hit, Wicked. And it was when my daughters were in middle school. So I have heard every song from Wicked at least 1,000 times because of that CD, which I eventually lost, quote unquote, lost the Wicked CD. So tell us about the movie Wicked.
Yeah, well, my daughter is a middle school girl right now.
Okay.
She's 13, and she's a singer and a dancer, mostly a dancer, but she loves, she wants to be on Broadway, and she's super talented, and I'm just so proud of her. And I hope she's listening now. Hi, Amy.
Hi,
I
Amy.
hope she is. We'll see. But anyway, so it was her 13th birthday, and she wanted to go see Wicked at the movie theater, and I totally get it. And I was down for that, to be,
Heck yeah.
a fun-loving dad and just have fun at the movies. But I have to say, I did not love the movie. My daughter did. I think my wife did. It seemed like a lot of people have liked it. I didn't love it. It wasn't my cup of tea. But Sai, one of the reasons I didn't love it is I am a little skeptical of this whole premise of like taking something that's essentially a fairy tale and then trying to kind of complicate it morally, to sort of say, okay, look, we have these archetypes of good guys and bad guys. Let's imagine that maybe the good guys aren't really so good and the bad guys aren't really so bad. And, if we can only kind of get to the bottom of their story, then maybe everybody's a good guy. Who knows? Now, I don't know. In my life, I think that's not a bad strategy because, as Catholics, as Christians, we believe we're all sinners and we're all capable of redemption. And so,
right.
We want to keep in mind that there aren't just like pure bad guys or pure good guys out there. But fairy tales serve a really special purpose in our cultures, to kind of like give us this kind of archetypal mindset where we sort of understand like the consequences of choices that we make and the idea that there are things worth fighting for and there are things that go bad and need to be, either done away with or reformed or something like that. And so, the original Wizard of Oz, which I had the privilege of writing about in my book that you mentioned, in the book that I co-wrote with David Baird and Michael Ward, Popcorn with the Pope. I love the original Wizard of Oz. And, there are some morally complicated characters in that original story, the wizard being one of them. But I don't know, Wicked to me is just kind of like you take the Wicked Witch and you sort of try to turn her into the good guy. I don't know. Doesn't really work for me.
I am very sympathetic to that point of view, that this idea of somehow revising the fairy tales is, and I have to say, on television this year, I watched the entire second season of the Tolkien thing that they're doing over at the Rings of Power over at Amazon. And every Tolkien fan, every Tolkien fan is like, I hate that show. I've watched every episode of it. I hate that show, but I've watched every episode twice. But because you're just trying to get your Tolkien fix. But one thing that I really worried about was that they were gonna try to make us understand Sauron. They were gonna try to make us, and that is absolutely antithetical to what Tolkien is about. Evil in Tolkien is really genuinely evil. And it's inexplicable. You can't explain it away. You can't generate a motive that you can go, oh, I understand now. It is utterly baffling why a good creature like the predecessor, the creature that was the angel who became this devil, Sauron. Yeah. Why? But once he's a devil, he's a devil. And don't try to understand him, because you're just going to get caught in a web. And I think I felt like in that second season they were at least smart enough to not try to make Sauron a sympathetic character. They showed Sauron as a manipulator who tries to make himself a sympathetic character to others, but underneath it, they didn't see him as a sympathetic character. And there's something important about that.
I'm glad to hear that. I actually haven't seen much of that show, and maybe it's because I'm maybe a rare Tolkien fan who kind of doesn't love watching a lot of Tolkien representation on screen. I like Peter Jackson's movies just fine, but I love the images that the books have sort of left in my mind, and I like to go back to the books a lot. So I'm not like itching for more like kind of legendarium stuff like probably a lot of Tolkien fans are. So I've kind of stayed away from the Amazon show. But I'm glad to hear that. I mean, yeah, because Sauron is, I mean, if in the kind of cosmology or whatever of Tolkien, he's kind of akin to an angel, then, I mean, an angel is a creature of pure will. So, I mean, when the angel's will turns against God, then that's that. There isn't any like redemption for the angel in the same way that there is for us humans, because we have bodies, we have, we're more complex creatures in a sense, like that God is able to redeem because our will can be brought back to him over and over again. So yeah, that's interesting.
So, but why? So Wicked is an exercise then in taking what were clear moral categories and muddying them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people would say, well, that's good. We're teaching children to see the gray areas. Life is full of gray.
Yeah, I get that, and I don't think Wicked is the end of the world in that regard.
Well, you're wrong. Forget it. Let's get rid of it. Never have him on the show again. Wicked is clearly the end of the world. Where's your sense of drama?
Si, even in my own family, I get a little bit of this kind of, lighten up, Dad.
Yes.
Like, about stuff like this, right? Because I don't need to read like all of kind of I don't need to go all the way back to Aristotle's Poetics or something in every single piece of literature or film or whatever that I interpret. But I don't know. There's just something particular. Maybe it's just because I've seen The Wizard of Oz so many times, and I just have those categories of good and evil in my mind that are attached to that movie, that Wicked kind of bothers me. Maybe one of the other reasons is Wicked was kind of the first of its kind to do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where we see it all the time now, right? Like Maleficent is like that. And, there are a whole lot of these sort of, turning the fairy tale or retelling a story from the perspective of the bad guy or whatever. And when I think the author of the original book's name was Gregory Maguire, when his book came out in the 90s, the Wicked book, it made such a huge splash because nobody had really thought to do that before, with maybe a few exceptions. So I don't know, maybe I'm just a little sensitive, but the songs are good. There's Stephen Schwartz, he's a great Broadway guy, West End guy or whatever. And so I totally get it if you want to just go and have fun and sing along to the songs. It's fun. And I actually think we need more musicals. I think musicals are really fun and great. And a lot of movies are kind of a drag. Musicals are fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's my thing about musicals. Are there performers that like can the movie stars of today do what the movie stars of 1945 could do? I'm not sure that they can. I don't think they. No. I mean, in some ways, like you hear Judy Garland, and she's just so magnificent, but you also realize she was basically tortured as a child to becoming that, to developing that there's something so beautiful about her, but I don't know if we want to go back to that system that was producing Judy Garland's.
Definitely not. We don't want to go back to the casting couch or anything like that. But you do sometimes watch these old movies and you realize like some of these old movie stars, they were trained in vaudeville, they were trained for the stage, all this stuff. So they had all these skills that actually people nowadays that we see on the big screen, they've never really experienced that. I mean, in this movie, in the Wicked movie, you have Ariana Grande, at least, who is like an actual recording star, singer,
Right.
So she knows what she's doing with her voice. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, but like James Cagney, the great villain of so many mobster movies, is also just one of the great dancers and singers of his era. And so he could do. Didn't he do Yankee Doodle Dandy? I think he did.
Yeah. He played George M. Cohan in Yankee Doodle Dandy. That's one of my favorites. I love that.
Yeah. So you'd like to see more musicals, but there is a thing about that we. Why can't we just enjoy a story that follows the there almost seems to me now this is going to be maybe drawing too much out of something, but it does seem to me that we have a certain cultural self-loathing that we don't want to believe in good guys and bad guys anymore. We don't, and certainly errors were made in Hollywood movies where, okay, how many movies can the Native American people be portrayed as the bad guys? Like that's clear, but it's not the same when you're talking about a green witch. She's not an oppressed minority. There seems to me there's some other loathing in us that we just don't want to. We don't want to have any moral certitude because we don't think we're worthy of moral certitude anymore.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. We're losing our grasp on the categories of good and evil and right and wrong, or maybe even worse, our mindset is flipped on these things. So, everything we used to think was good is now bad, and so now we need to sort of take all the old stories and flip them around. I say, why not make new stories with people who don't look like the good guys in the old movies, but make them the good guys? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because there are good guys who look like every single race, every single type of person, or whatever it may be, whatever kind of category we're talking about, write some new stuff.
Right. And it doesn't, it doesn't have to be, there is an implicit critique of this treasure that we have of the Wizard of Oz. If you do a kind of sequel to it, or something that takes its universe and deconstructs it morally, there is an implicit critique that they were wrong and we're right about morals.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, we were talking off mic about how this movie Wicked is actually, I didn't know this going into the movie theater, is actually Wicked Part 1. So I guess there's going to be a Wicked Part 2, but when I was walking out of the movie theater, I said to my wife, isn't The Wizard of Oz just Wicked Part 2? I mean, like, we know what comes next. We know what the rest of the story is.
Right, yeah. That's funny. So I don't know how they did it, though. Did they do the whole musical and now there's going to be another, or did they actually stop halfway through what I would recognize from both of my daughters? Dad, we're driving home from school. Could we put the Wicked CD on again? And then we took them to the theater to see Wicked when it was in Los Angeles, and it's one of my great experiences as a father, because my younger daughter, when the Elphaba, I think it is, hits the high note at the end of Act 1. My daughter's standing in the theater, I think she's like 11 at the time, just tears streaming down her face. Like, this is the greatest moment of my life. Like, she just hit that note. And you feel so great as a parent when you have a moment like that for your child. But is that where it ends? Does it just end like Act 1 of the...
My understanding is my daughter anyway, and my wife and others I've talked to who know the musical, because I don't really know it very well. They can't think of any songs that were left out. Oh. So I don't really know where it's going to go from here. I don't know if they're going to come up with some new songs, or if they're mistaken. You might have to talk to another film expert about that. I'm sorry, Sal. I'm letting you down. So, but the performers, how were the performers? Like, I think it was okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It was okay. I thought Ariana Grande was okay. I had never heard of Cynthia Erivo, who plays the Wicked Witch of the West. I thought she was okay. Not that great. I mean, it was kind of forgettable, to be honest. And maybe that's just because I'm a 44-year-old man, and
it's definitely because you're 44.
Probably so.
It's 100% because of that. Yeah.
So I thought it was okay. I wouldn't highly recommend it, but maybe if you're a musical fan, it will give you that fix, I guess.
All right. Well, so when's the last really good musical that you saw? Like new one? I don't mean like, oh, I caught it on Turner Classic Movies, but I mean like, what's a good musical that's been made in modern times?
That's a great question. I don't have a great answer. There was La La Land that came out a few years ago, and I at the time sat in the theater and I thought that was a really great movie, but I have mostly forgotten about it. So it can't have been then one of those movies with real movie musicals with real staying power for me. So I don't know. Si. I always just kind of go to the older ones. Those are my go-tos, you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk more. We do. What I would like to talk with you about next is a Netflix movie. And I don't know, you're a movie connoisseur, so I don't know if you watch Netflix movies, but they have one on Mary. The movie Mary came out just before Christmas. It's out now. We'll get Andrew Petiprin's take on that right after this on Catholic Answers Live. We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
From its earliest days, Catholic faith has been lived by a yearly cycle of feasts and seasons. The new book from Mike Aquilina and Adam Lucas, Feasts of Our Fathers, is a one-stop companion for praying and meditating through the holy days and seasons of the Church with help from the most ancient Christian people. Don't just read about the early saints, pray with them. Order your copy of Feasts of Our Fathers now at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live on this 19th day of December, and I say it like that because it's my father's birthday and my oldest daughter's birthday, so to my father and my daughter, happy birthday to both of you. And we're talking movies. It's coming, this is the time of year. A lot of people go to the movies. People get time off, families together. People go, let's go see a movie. And Wicked has certainly benefited from that holiday spirit. It came out just before Thanksgiving, so we just discussed Wicked. But then I imagine there will be people who are like, let's just put a Netflix on tonight. Family gather around watching Netflix, and Mary, the new movie about the mother of Jesus, is on Netflix. Have you seen Mary?
I have. So yeah, I did. What do you think of it?
I'm like 4 or 5 days since I watched it, and I'm still processing, trying to figure out what I think about it. Honestly, I'll say this, and I do note that you turned this completely back on me. Did not even give any opinion until I went first.
I'll tell you what I think. I promise.
Okay, but I felt like it was a good faith effort. I did not feel at all like this was by people who were trying to be in any way disrespectful. As a matter of fact, I think they were truly, it was an effort that was honorable, trying to honor the Virgin Mother. The thing that I said to Tom Nash about it the other day, and this is the way I feel about it, it's not the movie I would have made about Mary. I think if I had seen that script, I'd have been like, all right, well, couple rewrites, and we'll get there, but it's not there yet. So that's my review.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you on that point for sure. I definitely did not watch this movie and think these are people who don't want people to honor the Blessed Virgin Mary or to think highly of her. These are the people making this movie are definitely not trying to say something anti-Christian or anti-Catholic.
Right.
I did find it strange though. So it's directed by this guy DJ Caruso, who's made a bunch of TV and movie stuff. I'm not that familiar with his work. I've seen a couple of his movies. He made the movie Eagle Eye years ago. I don't know if you've seen that movie with Shia LaBeouf.
I think I have
among
seen
other
that
things,
movie.
but
Yeah. I think I'm in my mind. I'm confusing it with the Will Smith movie about almost the same thing. But I'm sorry that
kind of the same
I
movie.
mashed them up in my brain. But
Enemy of the State. Yeah, they're similar. Yeah. Well, anyway, so he's made a lot of stuff, and the funniest thing, Si, when the movie started, I thought it was so interesting that it opens by saying like, you think you know the story of the Blessed Virgin, you think you know the story of Mary, but you don't know the half of it, or so. It's basically like, we're going to tell you like this like real story.
Yeah.
And then it proceeds to kind of tell the story that's all this stuff that's not in the Bible, that's just completely made up about, Mary and her whole family, in a sense, having these encounters with the angel Gabriel, with Mary being sent off to kind of be this like temple handmaiden, with all this like intrigue about, stuff with King Herod and like all these kinds of things. So it was, it was not, if you're looking for like kind of the definitive, here's like the best way to put Mary on screen, this is definitely not the movie for you. But what I often say to people, I also just didn't think it was a super interesting movie, but what I often say to people who are really worried about or even paranoid about something being not faithful to the scriptural account or to like tradition or something like that, is that I say there is no such thing as a faithful adaptation of like a biblical story, for example. Like every filmmaker is always making choices, right? Is always making his or her own piece of art. So like, it's just always a question of degree of like what this person thinks about the topic, about the characters, whatever. But this one had a lot of stuff that I just kind of thought, okay, this is like let's make a movie about this biblical character called Mary that really is just our own story.
And there was a lot of proto-evangelium of James in there, like the names Anna and Joachim of her parents, and then the temple service and all that. But you're right. The thing that bothered me was let me see if I can encapsulate it, and I will repeat what I have previously said when Tom Nash asked me about this on the air. But the scene of the Annunciation. This is clearly. This is important in the story of Mary. I mean, even if you take out the world context, the Annunciation is the center of the story of Mary. There may be other centers, but this is clearly a moment of great gravity. And I when I was watching because the angel Gabriel's there, and you've already been introduced to the angel Gabriel, then it kind of comes on you like, oh, this is it. This is the moment of the Annunciation. This is what he's about to say to her, and it just doesn't work. It's not a good, it's not a well-made, dramatic, interesting moment. And she doesn't say any of the things that she says in the Bible. Like, I was like, well, I mean, it's okay if you want to add to the story, but why take out her very dramatic response to this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think she says, let it be me, rather than, but yeah, the dramatic response. I'm the handmaid of the Lord. Be it unto me according to thy word, or whatever. Right. It's a little bit of a little deflating that she just has this sort of like self-referential kind of, okay, all right, I'll do it kind of thing.
It sounded very 1970s pop psychology to me. Let it be me. Like, it's not about you. Like I mean, it is about her, but that her response has nothing to do with, okay, yes, let me be the center. And I felt disappointed in the Mary in the movie. Like, that's not what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. I will say I liked pretty well the depiction of Herod the Great, played by Sir Anthony Hopkins. So I mean, you've never heard of anybody in this movie. They're all kind of nobodies. I mean, they do fine. I think that they do okay, but they blew the budget, the casting budget anyway, on Anthony Hopkins, the great Sir Anthony Hopkins, who plays King Herod. And I think that in my mind anyway, I definitely imagine Herod as a kind of just real real maniac. And I think that's definitely, I mean, of course he was, right?
He
He
was.
ordered the execution of babies. So
Yeah.
what a maniac. And that comes across really well in the movie. I think that this Herod is a real, talk about good guys and bad guys.
He's a
this
bad
is
guy.
a bad guy, no doubt about it.
Well, and Mary is the good guy. I mean, she really is
Yeah.
good. I'm not convinced that she's conceived without sin. I don't that she doesn't seem to be different. She seems to be, better than other people in the sense of being the heroine of the piece, but not to be significantly different. They didn't wrestle at all with her, like what it means to be a true innocent in a world where there are no innocents, where nobody else is an innocent. So her goodness is clear, but not her genuine purity that the at least from the Catholic understanding of Mary that should be there. That wasn't there. But I got to say, there is one moment that I felt was genuinely dramatic and striking, and it's the moment that Herod first sees Mary, and he thinks that she's bewitching him or something.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that's the movie right there. That should have been the movie. Was the something about this? This is an encounter of true, genuine obedience and innocence, looking bravely into the eyes of evil, and evil flinches. Evil goes, "What is that?" And I loved it. I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, I thought that was a kind of innovation in the story of Our Lady's life that was welcome. I thought, I mean, that seems to me like exactly the kind of thing, exactly the kind of effect she would have had on someone with a rotten heart, because she doesn't really even mean to do it. She's just sort of standing there watching what's going on, which I think in that scene, the rabbi is being tortured or something like that, or some,
with the crown
or
of
maybe
thorns.
or maybe the high priest even. I don't remember. It's some religious figure is being kind of belittled and tortured
Baba
with the
Ben
crown
Buddha.
of thorns. Ah, there it is. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I also thought, Sai, I don't know how you felt about this, but I and this isn't like a huge spoiler. I mean, the basic contours of this movie the ending should be known, I think, to people who turn it on. But they do this little interesting move at the end where they try to reconcile Matthew's gospel and Luke's gospel, where in Matthew's gospel the Holy Family flee to Egypt, but in Luke's gospel they go to the temple where Jesus is presented on the 8th day. So they kind of like show how both could have been possible.
Yeah.
How both were possible, I guess, in the truth of the story. But it's kind of a funny way that they do it.
I think they did it backwards. Like the obvious explanation is they went to the temple before Herod knew,
then they took off,
and then they fled. Like this idea of like, let's take a quick break. Like, how far is Egypt? I mean, Egypt is like 600 miles away, and they're like, wait, let's just backtrack real quick and go to the temple. That I don't know. That I didn't like that. That just seemed like bad filmmaking to me.
You might be right about that. I thought it was sort of a funny, like, hey, what if we did it the other way? Let's see. Maybe people will buy it. I don't know. I guess you didn't buy it, Si. No.
I do think there's still a movie to be made about Mary and about the Nativity. I mean, I think there's certainly Catholics will look at this, especially Catholics who maintain kind of the old traditional Catholic belief. And I don't use those words in a denigrating way. I just mean that they are old and traditional of Mary, of the birth of the Lord being a miraculous birth. You're not going to get that in this movie. So I can see where a lot of people will have. But I mean, myself, I feel like the filmmaker gets to make the film he wants to make. But his obligation is to draw me into his vision, to see what he sees. And that part I object to. I don't object to, okay, we have a theological difference about the nature of the birth of the Savior. Okay, fine, you want to depict it your way. But it just was like, it had no drama. It had nothing to me.
Yeah. I think this is always a danger when filmmakers try to make a biblical movie. I really do. Because what are you trying to say? Because like if it's just a realist film or something, you're just trying to tell a story that then may sort of provoke a certain contemplation or something, right?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to show viewers like the life of Christ or the life of Mary or something like that, what are you trying to achieve with that? I mean, are you trying to sort of get people to go show up at the doorstep of a church and convert, or are you trying to deepen the already existing faith of people who watch it? Or, I mean, in this case, it's hard to tell because I think most of the cast were actually Israelis, and I think it's a very sort of faithful Jewish kind of depiction, as it should be. I mean, Jesus was a Jew. I mean, so of course they're going to show like the everyday life of kind of this community under the oppression of the Romans. But I mean, what effect is it supposed to produce? I'm not really sure. I think that's just always something that filmmakers wrestle with when they're trying to make a movie about someone like Mary.
Well, I'll leave that as the final word on the movie. That it seems like we had a very similar experience of, well, this could have been something, but it just wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know if I would recommend it or not. Would you? I mean, I guess I would say to somebody, yeah, check it out if you want to. But
I want Tim Staples to watch it because he wrote this giant book about Mary. And Tim will see it theologically, but he's a grown up. He's not going to see it as a try to just interpret it as a theological document. So I want to hear what he has to say. So I've recommended it in that way, like to some people, like this is a curiosity. But as far as sitting down for a family movie about Mary, it didn't. To me, I really would say that's a pass. I don't know. I guess Netflix is doing this. They're going to make religious movies. I guess they got one out about Moses. I haven't seen the Moses one. I don't know if you knew that. Netflix made a movie about Moses. But so I'll be interested to see what they do. Maybe they'll get better at it. But this one I'd say was a miss.
I think so too. I think that the acting was fine, the scenery was fine, but it didn't have the feel to me of a kind of polished Hollywood movie that or even a kind of offbeat sort of arty movie that had a really interesting script. It was just kind of it was just kind of everyday fare with a little bit of innovation.
Now, I did not read this myself, but somebody told me there was some controversy about the girl who played Mary being a Jewish girl. Did you hear anything about that? Because to me, that's
no.
I don't know what the controversy was, but if that is the controversy, please stop, whoever that is. Like a Jewish girl playing Mary is a really good choice. Just stop it. This girl was lovely. She didn't have a good script to work with, but she was wonderful.
Yeah, she was good, and I actually thought the guy who played Joseph was okay too. Although in my mind, I imagine Joseph being a little more mature than this man in this movie is a little bit on the frivolous side. Although he has a moment to kind of display some physical heroism that we don't know we don't believe the real Saint Joseph actually was called upon to demonstrate. But but he was good. They were good. And if anything, Si, maybe it's just a good opportunity for people to remember the Jewishness of our faith. Which I happen to believe is kind of under fire at the moment. I think that there's a lot of sort of, latent or maybe even somewhat explicit anti-Semitism that has no place in the Catholic Church. So people should see like a Jewish Mary, a really Jewish Mary, and a really Jewish Joseph. Yeah.
Right. Well, one of the, I mean, again, a critique of this movie though is that it culturally, you can't really distinguish the Jews from the Romans very well. That whatever is really fully Jewish, you're like, well, I don't know, like they're farming olives, they have an olive. Like, what is Jewish about them? You didn't. I don't know. I guess even in the temple, I wasn't exactly sure what was going on in the temple. Like, what did they do in the temple? I couldn't tell from the movie.
Yeah, they didn't really show them, offering sacrifices and stuff like that, or show what we believe would have been kind of the vibrant temple culture. Right. They did show though, there's one scene towards the beginning where I guess this is the part actually where the rabbi, or now I'm forgetting who this is, but anyway, this character gets sort of tortured by Herod, where he wants to put the imperial insignia on the temple, and they're getting upset about this, because there really is no king, but there's no king but Yahweh, right? So that sort of comes across a little bit anyway. And there's a bit of the zealot storyline that runs through the movie a little bit, of kind of the Romans are oppressive to the Jews, but it isn't entirely clear that it's because they have this one great God, and their devotion to him conflicts with the kind of civic religion of the Romans that these soldiers all around uphold. So
it wasn't clear to me that Mary herself had much of a relationship with God. Like, I don't, where was her? Like, she had a relationship with the temple, she had a relationship with Gabriel the angel, but I didn't see her have much of a relationship with God at all.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and in fact, I mean, she seems even, it doesn't necessarily seem sinful per se, but like she even her service at the temple seems a little bit sort of like, well, she'd rather be planting flowers or be running in the field or something like that,
Yeah.
as if to indicate like, maybe what goes on in this place isn't quite as important as what happens in other places,
Well,
which would
yeah.
be an odd
The
thing.
the great revelation of her personality is actually her leaving temple service to go out and give bread to the poor. So
Right, right.
yeah, there's a kind of it's just too many mixed messages. All right, we're talking with Andrew Petiprin about movies. We got a lot more to discuss. Maybe we'll discuss some. You know what? You talked when you talked about Wicked. You mentioned this idea of kind of morally reevaluating fairy tales, so blurring these lines. Well, there's a moral reevaluation of one of the most beloved Christmas movies going on right now. So is It's a Wonderful Life a secretly communist film? Is it somehow is it morally wrong? We'll ask Andrew Petiprin when we come back right after this.
Hang on, we'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and His gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Want the latest pro-life news? Want it delivered? Sign up. It's free. EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your source for everything happening now in the fight to protect the sanctity of human life. New episodes delivered every week to your inbox. So if you really want to know,
sign up today.
Go to EWTN.com/pro-life today.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Popcorn with the Pope is Andrew Petiprin's book. It's about the Vatican film list. You know what? I should just ask you about that because I'm sure there are many people who are like, the Vatican, what? Yes, the Vatican has an official doctrinal list. It's church doctrine, if I understand correctly. What are the best movies ever? Is that correct? It's a doctrinal declaration by the church of the best movies ever. Or am
no,
I? Oh, that's not what it
that
is.
Not
okay,
correct.
my bad.
That is
okay.
not correct. Site. There is in 1995 there was issued a list called Some Important Films, and it was divided into three categories: art, religion, and values. And it contains all kinds of movies. Most of them are European movies. A few of them are American things, like, for example, It's a Wonderful Life, which I think we're about to discuss. It's on the list. But Catholics are under no obligation to like these movies or to think that they're edifying or to recommend them to friends or to show them in their parishes or anything like that. But some people who worked at the Vatican in the social communications department, or whatever it was called back then, came up with this list to honor the 100 years of the motion picture. So we have this list. It came out a long time ago, and these two guys and I, Michael Ward and David Paul Baird, finally got around to writing a book where we comment on all 45 of the movies on the list. And it was a lot of fun to write the book. I really recommend everybody buy a copy.
Well, now you're a total movie guy. When you see the list, are you like, doggone it, I haven't seen some of these? There are some movies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really? You hadn't seen them all?
I had not seen them all. Yeah, and we divided up the list, among us, and there are still one or two that I haven't seen actually on the list because they weren't assigned to me. But I have seen most of them, and like I said, a lot of them are European movies, and that's kind of my jam. So I love European cinema. So there's movies on there by like Roberto Rossellini and Carl Theodor Dreyer and Andrei Tarkovsky and people like that.
Does Die Hard on there?
No, Die Hard didn't make it.
All right.
But
now you're talking
that is
about
one of my favorites. We've talked about that on the air before, and I think definitely a good Christmas movie. If you've got the stomach for the violence, go for it.
Okay, so the check out Popcorn with the Pope. But let's talk a little bit about one of those movies that the Vatican said is a movie of note. It's a Wonderful Life. All right. Well, the assumption is It's a Wonderful Life is just a great, beautiful movie with wonderful morals and a great story and acting and everything. What's the controversy now over It's a Wonderful Life?
Well, let's start by bringing up another movie franchise, and that's Star Wars. Do you remember a few years ago, Cy, when some smarty pants film critic decided that the best way to read the original Star Wars trilogy was as that the rebellion were actually, talk about switching roles here, about good and bad, that the rebellion were actually just kind of misguided, hippy-dippy, just kind of misguided fools, and that the Empire was really good. The Empire was good. It provided order and stability, and so the Empire was that they were really the good guys. I
think I might have missed this controversy. I am definitely having feelings about it as you describe it, but
it's total. I hope your feelings are. That sounds like total nonsense to me.
It does. But, that's total nonsense to me. Yeah, it sounds like some of the. I mean, Mussolini. He made the trains run on time. What's the problem we got with Mussolini?
Right.
What's a couple million Serbs here or there? That's the way it feels to me.
Right. What's the entire planet Alderaan? Right. Blow it up. Right. Well, It's a Wonderful Life. There are people who I think are maybe a little too smart or something. I don't know. I get myself into trouble in the same way sometimes. But there are people who kind of think, well, It's a Wonderful Life. Look, I mean, George Bailey is kind of, he really should have left. He should have just left his town like he wanted to, because there's no future for him there. Towns like that are going to die anyway. And, this guy, Mr. Potter, he's got a beat on the way the world is going. Like we've got to kind of get into the modern world of, finance and globalization and, and all these kinds of things. And there's no place for this little building and loan and people kind of like taking care of each other. I find that nonsense too. To be honest, you might not be surprised, but I find It's a Wonderful Life to be a beautiful movie about, among other things, the virtue of solidarity, which we believe as part of the deposit of Catholic social teaching, that what George Bailey is willing to sacrifice for the sake of the people in the place where he grew up is noble and noteworthy. And Mr. Potter, even if he is ultimately going to be kind of on the victorious side of these questions as the world moved forward after World War II, what George Bailey represents and what the town of Bedford Falls represents is a beautiful and wonderful thing where people care about each other. I mean, even to the point, Cy, where at the end of the movie, when George realizes he wants to be alive and he wants to go on sort of doing what he's been doing, he walks into his house, and the very people who are there to kind of take him away and arrest him for losing all this money are there to help him pay off his debt. They're putting money into the basket too. So, to me, It's a Wonderful Life is it's a movie about so many things that are good for our souls. It's a movie about prayer, for one thing. It's a movie about the ministry of angels, even if the depiction of angels is a little bit unorthodox for us, but still it's neat to see kind of an angel at work. It's a movie about family. It's a movie about the love of family and the love of home, and these are all things that we are unequivocally for as Catholics. So to imagine that, this old Mr. Potter, I mean, he, in my opinion, is kind of a really pitiful character at the end of the movie, because he's alone with his money and he doesn't understand what is really worth living for. There's another character who's a little less pitiful, but that's Sam Wainwright, who is George Bailey's old friend from childhood. And you can see he's a little bit pitiful too. He's gone off and lived this big dream where he's made a fortune and he travels the world. But what does he have to show for it? Fancy cars? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. But he doesn't have the love of family.
I didn't know this was going to... We have to continue this conversation on the other side because there's just so much to unpack here. It's a wonderful... you know what? Maybe we could do a reevaluation of the Gospels where the tax collectors are the good guys. I think Matthew as a tax collector was the good guy, and this whole conversion... that Matthew was contributing to society and the bringing of order, and I think we need to reinterpret the Gospels as well. We'll talk about that on the other side. Andrew Petiprin is our guest. And we twice a year so far, but maybe we'll up it. We'll see. We talk about movies, and we're talking about It's a Wonderful Life. Does It's a Wonderful Life miss the mark or hit the mark morally? We'll continue with that conversation right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Happy Advent to you. Getting closer and closer to the big day. Christmas Day is just 6 days away now. Thanks for being here with us. We're talking movies. We'd like to do, these kind of seasons, beginning of summer and right here as we're approaching Christmas. Nice time to talk about movies because there's all the holiday movies and winter movies at this time of the year, and then there's all the summer movies at the summertime of the year. And a nice guy to talk about the movies, a very nice guy to talk about the movies is with us today, Andrew Petiprin, former Anglican priest and the author of several books, including Popcorn with the Pope, A Guide to the Vatican Film List, is here with us. He's also a columnist at Catholic World Report, the host of the Ignatius Press podcast, and the co-founder of the Spe Salvi Institute. Just can't stop doing good stuff. He just can't stop himself, but he pulled himself away from all that to be here with us talking about movies today. Thank you for coming back for another hour, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Cy. I always enjoy it.
I really enjoy talking with you. You bring that, I think you have you got all the education, the Oxford and all of that. I mean, but, we've all been to Oxford and, well, actually, most of us haven't, but you got all that. But you also have, I think, I don't know how to say this quite, but you seem like a normal person to me. Like a normal, not like you go to a movie and go, I'm gonna try to have the most educated take on it or the most, fancy take, but just like, is this a good movie or not? Should people watch this movie or not?
Yeah, I mean,
Does
that's
that hurt
what it
your
comes
feelings?
down to. No,
I called you normal?
That's one of the. I love. That's a great compliment. I really appreciate it because I do try to think that way. I mean, sometimes you can overthink, and I do that from time to time for sure. My wife definitely says that I do, but I try when I'm watching things to just, do I like this? Does this move me? What is this doing to me? Just don't overthink.
Yeah. I actually don't have much of a problem with overthinking. I don't know. I think I have a problem with getting it up to thinking. So overthinking isn't really my problem. I need a running start just to get up to thinking. But you got me thinking before we went to the break, and I'm grateful for that. But I guess thinking follows emotion sometimes. And this critique of It's a Wonderful Life, that somehow the movie It's a Wonderful Life, the great Christmas movie, is morally mistaken in its love for the small and its love for the small town and this small fella and the small life, in a certain sense, lived by George Bailey, is a mistake. That seems like an odd way to read the movie.
Yeah, I think so. One of the great kind of myths of American life is the myth of the self-made man. And in a way, we understand why we have that myth, and it serves a certain purpose. We have an incredible ingenuity as a people. There's no doubt about it, and the world knows that about us. That said, there really is no such thing as a self-made man. I mean, we all come from somewhere. We are all the products of our homes, of our environments, of the places that we come from. And in the world today, we're very deracinated. That is to say, we're uprooted. And I mean, I myself feel this way. When people ask me where I'm from, it's not actually that easy for me to answer that question. I lived in a lot of different places when I was young, and right. There are places that feel more home-like than others. But yeah, George Bailey is somebody who really embodies a world of the past that we should lament to some degree, because he's a man who wanted to get out of his small town, who believed the world was bigger and better elsewhere. And of course, in some ways, he's right. He couldn't go to Broadway shows in Bedford Falls, New York. He couldn't go to the Metropolitan Museum. He couldn't go to, football games or whatever it was that you can do in big cities. But he had a depth of meaning to his existence that he only learns about when it's almost all taken away from him, when he gets to the end of his rope and he's not sure whether he even wants to be alive anymore. He comes to the realization that his life has meaning only because of the people who are in it. And I just think we ought to think more like that. We ought to, even as we live in a world that is fast-paced and definitely rewards people for sort of going up and out. We need to kind of remember where we came from and maybe even try to recreate something like a feeling of coming from somewhere where we don't have it.
There is a kind of, I would say, capitalist thinking and again, not trying to use the word as a derogatory word, just as a descriptive word, which is almost communist in its love for systems as the cure. And
Yeah.
I don't think always that the big time capitalists see that they're proposing essentially the same solution. They're saying our system is different, but the main difference is that our system works. And the fact is, the answer to what is required have a human life is not to be found in systems. Your system does not work if the problem being posed is, how do I live a fully human life?
Yeah, and particularly not a system of material. I mean, that was the whole problem with communism. Is it's a question of how do we manage material so that everyone's needs are met. And what we've tended to say in a kind of a hyper-capitalist response to that is, well, we just have a better way to produce stuff, like so that you have more of it and you're more comfortable. I think that Frank Capra, who's the director of It's a Wonderful Life, I think he is rightly critical of that kind of caricature of capitalism, and not just in It's a Wonderful Life, but also in other movies that he made. One of my favorites is called You Can't Take It With You, which also stars Jimmy Stewart and Lionel Barrymore and a couple of other actors that he used in some of his other movies. But in It's a Wonderful Life, I mean, it's hard to look at it as a critique of capitalism per se. I mean, George Bailey is a banker. He's a businessman, and I don't think Frank Capra is really trying to say that there's anything wrong with what George Bailey is doing. But what he is trying to say is there's a way to do that. There is a way to be a businessman that puts the common good ahead of one's own desire to amass large amounts of stuff, right? Yeah. Which is, that ability to amass stuff is kind of only possible in this sort of system of systems that you talked about before, right? Because if we just live in a system where it's a question of who has the most apples, I've talked about this in other contexts with other people before, well, the problem is all the apples are going to go bad if you keep them all, right? Like you just literally can't keep all the stuff to yourself. But somebody like Mr. Potter comes along in the 20th century and he's like, oh, yes, I can, because I'm not keeping apples, I'm keeping money. And if you don't give me your money, then you might not have a house anymore, right?
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah. So money, the fact of a kind of an abstract kind of store of value, so to speak, it means that you could just keep amassing this store of value. But I mean, Jesus himself, in the parable, in quite a few of his parables, they have an economic meaning, and the economic meaning doesn't seem to be, as it is sometimes parodied, or sometimes kind of not parodied, but reduced to a kind of hippie ethic of just don't have stuff, man. That's not what Jesus is teaching, but he is teaching that the stuff ain't going to do what you think it's going to do. It's like having all that stuff stored up in your barns. Well, this night your life will be required of you. Now who does all that stuff belong to? That's not an argument against having stuff, but it's an argument against seeing that stuff as the answer for your life.
Yeah, right. And that's certainly the conclusion that we draw from the end of It's a Wonderful Life. I mentioned before Frank Capra's other film, You Can't Take It With You. I mean, in a sense, you could have called It's a Wonderful Life, You Can't Take It With You. Because, I mean, that's kind of the point of the movie at the end. I mean, the Baileys live in this kind of drafty old house that they've refurbished. But the image of that house at the end of the movie is there is no place in the world you'd rather be than standing in that living room. Nowhere. I mean, like it is in a sense like a place where something truly, we might even say truly holy is happening, where, the people are coming together out of love for each other. The very end of the movie is, I mentioned before that there's some unorthodox angelology in the movie, which is to say, one of the main characters, Clarence Oddbody, is a human being who has died, and he's trying to get his wings as an angel. Now, we know that human beings don't ever become angels. Angels are angels and humans are humans. So that's not good theology. But there is some great theology at the end of the movie when everyone gathered in the room sings the great Wesley hymn, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, which is, just an absolutely beautiful testimony about the incarnation and about the kind of the true meaning that is given to our existence by the coming into the world of God himself. And George Bailey, although he declares earlier in the movie that he's not a praying man, who among us hasn't gotten to the end of our rope, whether we are a praying man or woman or not, and just, maybe we're going to mass, maybe we're doing everything we're supposed to do, but it really is in those moments of desperation where we're tested, where it's a question of, is God real or not? And George Bailey has that experience powerfully. So I think we have every hope that he's going to move forward in his life, renewed, refreshed, transformed. I mean, that's exactly what we all should hope for in our moments of need, when God comes to our aid and answers the prayers of those who make them for us.
Yeah. And it's striking when I hear you talk about it, how a work of art can do so much more than a work of theory, in a sense, in making that life attractive and showing its attractions and showing its values in a way that if I were theoretically, because you're right, George Bailey is a capitalist, he's a money guy.
Yeah.
He's not the bad guy, but there is a distinction, and there are qualities of life, not just labels that the art can depict that makes the movie valuable in a way that just a treatise or something on it wouldn't be valuable.
Absolutely. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when the Baileys go to the housewarming party of the Martini family, who own the bar. Mr. Martini is the bar owner, and obviously Catholic, Italian immigrants. And George Bailey's sort of humane practices as a banker have enabled this new American Catholic man and his family to own a home and to kind of get a share in what we call the American dream, which has a certain look when we consider it from the perspective of somebody like Mr. Potter or Sam Wainwright, but has a much more beautiful look and a much holier look, potentially, when we look at it from the perspective of, George Bailey seeking the common good, looking out for others, trying to make the community that he's, in a sense, kind of stuck in better than it was before. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I don't know, Sai. I mean, maybe this is why I'm such a movie guy and a book guy too. I mean, I just love the arts. I love stories, because to me, it's so much better to kind of see something instantiated, something real, and then to kind of go away from it and to contemplate it. It's a powerful thing to kind of look at the life of another person, and great art does that for us. It's a beautiful thing.
So you're not giving up on It's a Wonderful Life as a great piece of art?
No, and I'm throwing down the gauntlet. I have to say, I mean, it won't come to physical violence, I hope, but I will be happy to kind of engage in any kind of debate that might be on the offing to talk about the value of this movie.
Take up that challenge. Somebody call Andrew Petiprin. I want to see this debate on It's a Wonderful Life.
Let's do it.
That's I don't. He will take on anybody. He's not scared of anyone. I'm just trying to be your Don King, your promoter right now.
All right. I need your side. That's great.
Yeah. All right. We're going to take a quick break. Back with more conversation about movies, including movies that are coming up. I'm gonna make a bet with you that I can name one movie in 2025 that you, Andrew Petiprin, are going to go see in the theater. You're not going to wait for it to come out on video. I've got one in mind. I want to see if I am correct. Right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
EWTN has its own official YouTube channel with tens of thousands of videos covering just about every conceivable topic of interest to Catholics. And, best of all, it's free. Every day, EWTN adds new TV shows, live events, devotionals, homilies, and specials to its YouTube channel. Visit the EWTN YouTube channel today. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Film critic and cultural commentator. I'm looking at your face to see if you approve of my description of you, Andrew. The author of Popcorn with the Pope, among other things, is our guest, and we're talking movies, doing our semi-annual conversation about movies. Maybe I could just ask you about some movies that you've seen then, because we'll get to the movies that are coming up, but you kind of started this program by saying, look, it wasn't a good year for movies. Let's just be honest with it. It wasn't, and it hasn't even really been a good few years for movies. But was there anything that you saw over the course of 2024 that maybe if people are on a cold night want to go down to Blockbuster Video and get their video next week, that you would recommend they go down to Blockbuster for?
Yeah, definitely, Sai, for sure. One that I saw not too long ago and that I reviewed, in fact, for Catholic Answers, is a movie called Heretic, which was a pretty interesting movie, particularly about the whole idea of apology, of being, of kind of defending one's faith. It stars Hugh Grant, and he has really, I think, reinvented himself in the last decade or so as a really good villain. He has understood, the ability to be this sort of English accented baddie, and he is in this movie big time. And in this one, so he's not he's played a sort of political baddie and, sort of all kinds of things like that. In this one, he plays a guy who he postures himself as being really interested in getting to the bottom of which religion is true. So he welcomes these Mormon missionary women, these young women, into his home, and he gets them in without being entirely honest. They're not allowed to come in unless there's a woman present, and he says there is. It turns out that's a little ambiguous about whether there is, but they come in and they start talking about their faith, and it quickly turns out, I don't know if you've ever encountered somebody like this, Sai, like you want to talk about the truth claims of the Catholic faith, and then suddenly you realize you're talking to somebody who maybe knows what they're talking about better than you do, who is like,
it's basically
really,
my
really
job.
sharp.
That's my day job, Andrew. That's what I do.
Well, I guess that's true, but you're selling yourself short. You know what you're talking about, but
well,
these
sometimes
young women,
that you do get in a conversation with someone who surprises you, where you thought the conversation was like, oh, it's this kind of conversation. You realize, oh no, we're at a whole different level here.
Yeah, you think you're starting off with like, okay, so there are 4 gospels, and there was, there's Jesus or whatever. You start with some very basic stuff, and then you realize like, oh my gosh, okay, this person wants to ask me about, the Book of Enoch, and I don't know what, something really esoteric or whatever. No, well, in this one, so it basically turns into a horror movie or a thriller movie. Although it's not super gory, it's not super gruesome. Although it does have a couple scenes that I think will be a little hard to stomach for some people, but it is definitely not the worst that I've seen recently. But it is a really, really interesting psychological thriller rooted in this question of, what are we doing when we are trying to share the truth claims that we believe in? What are we willing to sacrifice in order to kind of see those claims embraced by somebody who's genuinely curious to get to the bottom of something? And where are there people who are just simply kind of baiting us, maybe even dangerous to us, by trying to engage us in this movie? It's more than just conversations. It's a game. I mean, it's a kind of thriller game, but it was quite an entertaining movie. And I think listeners will come away who decide to go and watch that movie. They'll come away, I think, really challenged for sure, but also like really with a deeper appreciation of probably some of the truth claims that maybe they take for granted.
Okay, so here's my fear with Heretic, and I have not seen it, but I've read your review and some other reviews, and let me just throw it out there for you that it may lead to a kind of or its conclusion, so to speak, or the conclusion that it leads the viewer to is a kind of indifferentist conclusion, which is like, well, you can't really explain belief, so you just leave these believers alone, even though it seems utterly foolish to you and probably to most intelligent people. You can't really explain it, so leave it alone.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I get what you're saying there, and I think that's one way that somebody, I would especially think like a kind of non-believer or neutral or something who goes in to watch that movie, I think they could come away thinking that. I think it's possible you could come away just kind of thinking it's foolish to kind of believe too strongly in anything. But I also think that for people who really do have deeply held convictions, for people who are convicted of the truth of the gospel, they really could come away remembering that there are real enemies of the gospel as well, and that so the life of the evangelist, which need not necessarily be some like carved out vocation, but just kind of the general posture of Christians going about in the world, is a, I mean, the young women in this movie are Mormons. They're not Catholics, obviously. So like what they're trying to get this man to believe in is not what we believe in. That said, I mean, the whole, especially the first part of the movie, you're just kind of cringing watching them, because you think like they're just like lambs to the slaughter here. I mean, they're way out of their depth, and they're kind of putting themselves in a dangerous situation. So,
okay.
I thought, kind of from the horror movie perspective, to go back to the good guys and bad guys thing, there's a real bad guy in this movie.
Okay.
And I don't think that anybody could come away from the movie thinking like, oh well, it's all just kind of, to each his own. No.
Yeah. Is he kind of a false seeker? That is, someone who pretends to be seeking, but really has already decided against God?
I would say that's an accurate way to describe him. It's a little more complicated than that. I don't want to spoil the whole thing, because there is a little bit of a reveal that is worth it. That's worth kind of the price of admission, but that's pretty much accurate, I would say. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we get those callers sometimes. But everybody's welcome. You can call, not today, but most days, 888-318-7884. Call with your questions or challenges to the faith. Any other movies that that 2024, that were not disastrous in 2024?
Here's one that just came to my mind. I'm going to spring this one on you, that was probably my favorite movie of the year that I forgot all about until this moment, which it's called Perfect Day. And it is directed by a German director named Wim Wenders, both with W's, W-I-M, W-E-N-D-E-R-S, Wim Wenders. And of all things, Cy, this is a movie about a man in Japan who cleans toilets for a living. Would that sound like a good movie to you, or what? Or how does that grab you?
So far, I feel slightly nauseous.
I mean, it is kind of a weird idea.
And it's not
right?
because it's in Japan. I just want to make clear, all right? I feel like you set me up a little bit by giving it a national location. It's the toilet part that I don't like. Japan is fine with me. Part. Yes.
The beautiful thing about it, though, is, I mean, can you imagine? You've already said it. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine a lowlier occupation in this world than somebody who cleans toilets for a living. And, we should be grateful for the people who do that work, no doubt. But this is a movie about a man who clearly has not always cleaned toilets for a living his whole life. He's a reader. He listens to music. He is clearly a man with an education, and maybe even at one point had a certain amount of means. I mean, maybe was a real wealthy man. But we don't know why he has suddenly descended to this state in his life where he has this extremely regimented life. He gets up in the morning. He goes to his job. He's the best toilet cleaner in the world. I mean, he's the best. And he goes home at night and he reads his books. He cycles around. He goes and gets dinner. It's like a very, very simple movie in some respects. But then there gets introduced into his story, as you might expect, something enters his life that he's not really looking for to happen. And it transforms him, but it also allows him to help transform someone else. And I'm just telling you, if you're looking for kind of a little movie that is not flashy, that is not trying to be some Hollywood blockbuster or something like that, but just a movie that you can put on, the whole family can watch it. It's in Japanese, so you do need to know that about it. But I promise you, when the credits roll, your feeling is going to be like, wow, I am thankful that movie exists. That really did something within me. It's not a Catholic movie. It's not a Christian movie. It's not an explicitly religious movie at all. It's just a human movie. And I really think we need more of those kinds of things, Cy. So highly recommend. It's called Perfect Day, directed by Wim Wenders from Germany.
All right. I'll get it. Perfect Day. It's in Japanese. It's got the subtitles.
Got the subtitles. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good one.
Let me ask you this. You've watched a lot of movies in different languages. Are there some languages that it's just more pleasant to listen to a movie? Even, like, I don't mean languages that you understand, languages you don't understand. Are there some languages where you go, yeah, I like that one better than the other ones?
The answer to that question is yes. And
me too.
The
I
language
have the same
is
Italian. You like Italian?
Italian. Yes, I was going to answer. I speak French and German. reasonably well. So I like watching French and German movies very much. I don't speak Italian, but I love Italian movies. I love hearing Italian spoken on the big screen. It's my favorite.
That's funny because for me, it's Japanese. I love to hear Japanese people talk. It doesn't sound like anything else. I don't even know where Japanese came from, but they just have a different intonation. They have a different pattern of the way they talk. I love listening to movies in Japanese. And there's been more of these movies where, like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Bullet Train, but, you know, there's more of these movies nowadays that filmmakers are willing to go, well, some of it's in English, some of it's in Japanese. You deal with it. I kind of like it.
Let's do it. I love it.
Yeah. All right. I didn't know the music was coming up, so I want more good movies from you for the year. But the Japanese toilet cleaning movie is called A Perfect Day?
Perfect Day, yeah.
Perfect Day. All right. Right back with more with Andrew Petiprin on Catholic Answers Live. Many people have forgotten just how revolutionary the Bible creation stories are. But the first 3 chapters of Genesis are a powerful challenge to anyone in any generation who would undervalue human lives. In the Beginning, the new book by Monica Migliorino Miller will take you on a fantastic journey through the first chapters of Genesis, unfolding the richness of life as God sees it. Get In the Beginning today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore.
When it comes to Catholic teachings about Mary, there's one question we hear more than any other. Where is that in the Bible? The answer? Everywhere. In Bible Mary, the Mother of Jesus and the Word of God, Father John Weiss opens Scripture to reveal a Mary who has been hiding in plain sight. Order your copy of Bible Mary today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic. And Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I just like talking with our guest, Andrew Petiprin. Get his book, Popcorn with the Pope. It's about the Vatican film list, and you'll love it. You'll love it. And the Vatican picked out these 45 movies that you ought to see, and I don't know if they're recommendations. They're just are they recommendations? Would you say the Vatican's like, yeah, you should watch this?
Well, that's one of the mysteries about the list. They just put the list out and they didn't really explain much.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny, if they are recommendations, I mean, some of them are hard to watch, really hard to watch. I mean, 1 or 2 of them even have nudity. There's violence in some of them. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we talk about in the book is like, you kind of need a book like ours. You need a little bit of a guide to kind of get your way into the list and see which ones might work for you, which ones should be recommended.
The Vatican has a weird relationship with nudity. I mean, if you go to the Vatican, there's nudity all over the place. So, I mean, that's a weird we're not Catholics aren't prudes, but we are. But we do. but you're supposed to always remain chaste. So it's weird. It's weird to be Catholic, man. I don't know. Explain it to me.
Yeah.
All this nudity.
Well, I mean, there is a difference between kind of the body to be contemplated as mystery, and a body to be desired as an object. And as human beings, we have a lot of difficulty figuring out which way to go.
Right.
And what is a mystery to one person is just, something to lust after to another. But yeah, in the Catholic tradition, we're an embodied faith. And so, yeah, I mean, it does get a little complicated sometimes in the way that we depict the human form and the way that we, in the film genre anyway, the way that we sort of look at what human beings do,
Yeah.
So it's a debate. It really is.
Yeah, yeah. And it's probably a debate we have to have with ourselves as well, in that you got to be honest with yourself. I mean, you just have to be honest. Like this is not good for me. I shouldn't be watching things like this. And if that's you, and it might be different at different stages in your life, but I mean, not everybody has the same temptations or faces the same struggles. So you got to be honest with yourself. Okay, so is Seven Samurai on the list?
No, it is not, unfortunately.
Are there any Japanese movies
No.
on the list?
There are.
Okay.
There are a couple, and actually I didn't review any of those, and now off the top of my head I can't remember which ones are which. But one of the critiques of the Vatican film list is that it doesn't have enough basically non-Western cinema on it. Which, if you are, as you seem to be, Si, like an aficionado of Japanese cinema,
I just like
that's one area.
I hate to say it, but I just like the way Japanese people talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how
Well,
deep
I
I
mean-
am, Andrew. That's the depth of my love of Kurosawa. Is, man, they talk cool.
Well, Kurosawa, I'm glad you mentioned him. Yeah, I mean, there should be a lot of Kurosawa movies on this list, and there aren't. So
Yeah.
that's too bad. Yeah.
All right. Anything else that you liked before we move on and talk about 2025? Anything else that you liked from 2024?
I'll give you one more. It's called The Beast, and it's directed by a French director named Bertrand Bonello, Bonello. The movie is mostly in English, however. So, there's that going for it for people who don't like movies in foreign languages. But it's a movie based partly on a short story by Henry James. And it's a real, I guess you could call it kind of a dystopian movie. I mean, it's kind of a startling movie about the future that we're heading towards, particularly with something like AI, where things are becoming increasingly kind of taken away from human agency, and human beings in the future maybe aren't really going to know what to do with themselves. So this movie is it plays to that a little bit. It's not a perfect movie, but it is, I think, a pretty interesting movie that speaks to the kind of technological crisis that I believe we're living through. Not everybody believes it's a crisis, but I do. And this movie kind of might make people think about that possibility. It's pretty good. It's called The Beast.
Not everybody believes that's interesting. I'm going to watch that one. That, of all the recommendations, that one grabs me. I don't know why. That sounds so interesting to me. Is it a sci-fi kind of movie, or
kind of
a little bit futuristic?
Yeah, it's set in three different time. So it's set in the Belle Epoque era, kind of the turn of the 20th century in France. There's one part. Then it skips ahead to the future, to the year 2014, so just 10 years ago from now, which, by the way, Si, the movie to me really proposes the idea that around that time, kind of 2014, 2015, something big changed in the world, and we're still kind of trying to figure out what it was. We're not sure what it was.
Everybody seems to know this, and nobody
Isn't
can
that
figure
weird?
it. Yes, something changed about a decade ago. Yes.
Something happened, right? And this movie really puts that on the radar. And then it jumps into the future even more. I think it's like 2044. It's sometime in the future, 20 or 30 years in the future, where everything's pretty much taken over by AI. There's like kind of mention in the movie of some kind of great catastrophe that has hit the world, and we're not really sure exactly what it was, but everybody kind of lives in their own kind of isolated, kind of siloed, solitary existences. And it's really sad and bleak, but it's a good movie. I mean, it's got some really disturbing scenes in it, but nothing that I would say is way beyond the pale. I mean, it's a thinking man's movie. Let's not overthink, but we can think, right? And this movie helps do that. The Beast.
All right, The Beast. All right, and you said most of it's in English.
Most of it is in English.
All right.
That's correct.
All right.
Yeah.
So I would, if I were to sum up what I take to be your view of the year 2024 in movies, is you're basically glad it's over. Let's try a new one. Let's start a new year and see how we can do.
Onward. Absolutely. It's time for something new.
Okay. I don't think we're going to get that much new, because I think what we're going to get is a lot more Marvel movies that have been reshot 4 times. I don't know if you've read about this Captain America movie that's coming out, but it used to be like they would slap together a Marvel movie and then they would make $1 billion, and they just can't do it anymore. It feels like whoever they made a deal with, let's put it that way. I don't want to suggest anything too demonic here, but whoever they made a deal with is no longer holding up their end of the bargain for the Marvel people.
Yeah, I mean, it could be superhero fatigue. I've heard that term used.
Yeah.
I used to enjoy a superhero movie every once in a while as much as anybody, but I mean, when it is the entire industry, and when the industry itself is already pretty decadent and also pretty exhausted and out of ideas, it's a terrible recipe for. I mean, you're only going to produce bad things after a while. And yeah, I mean, the new Captain America, it doesn't interest me one bit. I'm not. I really.
No, it doesn't. Does it?
I have. Yeah.
I mean, Anthony Mackie, he's fine
with,
and everything, but just the idea of another Captain, really, I don't care.
No, definitely not. Let alone any of the other kind of side characters from the Marvel universe that they're making little TV shows out of and stuff. I mean, you know, I don't know where we are with in terms of the film industry side, but I mean, my hope is that we're going to have to kind of probably the era of like everybody knows certain big movies is more or less over. And, you know, what we're going to need to do is have shows like this and sort of let me come and tell you about movies like The Beast and Perfect Day and stuff like that aren't on everybody's radar, but are out there. You know, they're not like breaking records. And let's just hope that these directors can find enough money to actually make them, because they do have interesting things to say.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Because I have to say, I'm sorry to go back to 2024, but there is something I didn't mention. Is one of the great filmmakers made a self-financed film that I have not seen, but self-financed starts off problematic. I think what that sounds like is there's going to be nobody here to say no. What's going to happen is now this person is going to, and of course I'm talking about Francis Ford Coppola and his movie Megalopolis, which didn't do well at the box office, but
yeah,
it seems like it feels like maybe like a train crash that at some point I'd like to see what happened.
Just check it out.
I'd like to see what this was. Any feelings?
You know
about
what
it?
I think? Well, I'm totally with you on that. I think that when you can do whatever you want to do, that's always a dangerous situation to be in. But yeah, someone like Francis Ford Coppola is. We'll see. I mean, if it's just sort of unwatchable decadence, or maybe there's something in there. I don't know. I'm tending towards the former rather than the latter. I will say though, Cy, if you want to watch a Coppola who makes really good movies, look at something by Sofia Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola's daughter. She made actually, and now my mind is not sure whether this was 2023 or 2024. Maybe it was 2024, and it will redeem it. But she made a wonderful movie about Priscilla Presley not too long ago.
That was
called
24.
Priscilla.
I think that was 24.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I recommend that one. That was
called
pretty
Priscilla.
Good. Priscilla. Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it.
All right. There we go. I'm glad we went back to 2024 then, just to get Sofia Coppola on there.
Circle back. Yeah.
All right. 2025. I said I knew the movie that you would be sitting in a theater seat to see. And so when we come back from the break, I'm going to say the name of that movie and see if I am correct. Andrew Petiprin, Catholic Answers Live.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The World Over with Raymond Arroyo. Coverage as seen through a Catholic lens.
All people of faith and sincerity need to awaken to this and protect this fundamental right of religious liberty.
Expert analysis.
Does Revelation judge history, or does history judge Revelation?
Stories vital to people of faith.
It's part of our faith that comedy and tragedy naturally go hand in hand.
Delivered to your inbox every week. Sign up today. Go to EWTN.com/worldover.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Andrew Petiprin, our guest. You can find his writing at, give us some places where the people can find your writing. Maybe it's more than just Catholic World Report.
Yeah, I've got a lot of great stuff at Catholic World Report, but you can also check out SpeSalviInstitute.com. Spe Salvi, like the encyclical by Pope Benedict XVI. I've got a lot of good posts up there. We also host a great podcast over there. So if you want some interesting conversations with some guests, most of them Catholic, you should check out what we're doing over there. But yeah, there's also AndrewPetiprin.com, my own website. I have some stuff over there. So and of course, you can check me out on Twitter. I try to kind of keep my hand in the old game of Catholic Twitter and other things too. So
why do you hate yourself? Why are you doing that? It's torture there.
I try to transcend it and bring every
okay. Yeah. Well, so you're the grace that's abounding. Do you see what I'm saying? Like where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. So you're there to bring the grace.
Yeah, I told everybody on Catholic Twitter, though, they shouldn't eat donuts after Mass, and they got really mad at me, Si. So maybe I don't know. I'm playing with fire.
What kind of maniac are you? Why would you say you shouldn't eat donuts after Mass? What's wrong with you? What was your premise? What happened to you? What? I actually. Well, I'm so deeply offended right now. I don't even know if I can continue the conversation. But what is that about? Why should you not eat a donut after Mass?
I was trying to make too big a point, I suppose, that I don't love the idea that we attach unhealthy eating with with what should be a really healthy the most healthy thing you do in the world is go and go to Mass, and so we don't want people to treat their bodies like they don't matter, and that kind of thing. So that's what I was getting at, but I totally get it. I touched the third rail. There's
that is
sacred
the third
space
rail
right
of
there.
Catholic life. Yes, donuts.
Yeah.
Next thing, what are you gonna do? Take on bingo? Oh, come on, man, get your life together.
I know,
actually, I'd be with you if you took on bingo. I'd be with you on that one. But all right. But so you're not against socializing after Mass. You're not against the parish trying to bring people. You just want them to serve lentils or something.
Well, yeah, people said to me things like, what are you going to do? Put out hummus and carrot sticks or something? And I said, that actually sounds great to me. But, I get it. Not everybody has the same snacking habits. So, I get it. I get it.
I think, the question is, do you want people to stay and visit after Mass or not? And donuts is yes, they will. You want them to. And hummus and carrot sticks, as that is a delicious snack, by the way. I agree with you on hummus and carrot sticks. It's just gonna be you, and I don't know who else is coming.
I'll be all alone standing there with my healthy snack.
Yeah, everyone will be like, bye, Andrew, enjoy your hummus, and that will be the end of it. All right, so in the year 2025, I believe there is a movie coming out that I asked you if you have found yourself in a movie theater very much, and confessed to you that I can't remember the last time I was in a movie theater because there's nothing that's grabbed me like I thought I want to see that in a theater. Not since Napoleon, and that disappointed me. But I believe in 2025 you will be at Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning 2, the big conclusion to Tom Cruise's second career as Ethan Hunt in the Mission Impossible movies. Am I correct?
That's a bingo, as Hans Landa says in Quentin Tarantino's movie Inglourious Bastards. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I should say that word on the radio, but anyway, there we are.
It's too late. We don't have the technology to beep you.
You can't dump it. Okay. Well, anyway.
Well, we could dump it if we wanted to, but it's not that. It's not dump quality. All right? Don't flatter yourself.
Well, anyway. That's a bingo. Yes, I love the Mission Impossible movies. I love them. The last one, Dead Reckoning Part 1, came out in 2023. It was one of the highlights of the year for me in terms of going to the movies, in terms of kind of the payoff, the feeling. I watched the movie now several more times since then. My kids love it. We watch it. I just think that what the Mission Impossible franchise has done in the last several movies, the last few have been directed by Christopher McQuarrie, and he's directing the last one that'll be coming out next year. It's the perfect blend of kind of a buddy movie. It's a movie about friends. It's a movie about saving the world. It's a movie about kind of your everyday kind of espionage, intrigue, James Bond type stuff. But it also, in my opinion, really strikes the right note in terms of kind of moral message. Unlike James Bond, Ethan Hunt, the main character in the Mission Impossible movies, is not a womanizer. And in fact, Tom Cruise, who's now an older actor, refuses to do intimate love scenes with younger female co-stars, even though there is a certain kind of love tension in between him and his female co-stars. So I just think it's the best of all worlds, honestly, these Mission Impossible movies. And by the way, Cy, we were talking before a minute ago about that movie, The Beast, that I recommended, that addresses the problem of technology. My understanding at the end of the last Mission Impossible movie was that Tom Cruise was going to destroy AI in the final installment of the Mission Impossible series. I really hope he follows through on his plan and this happens and the world will be free of it. Let's see. Who knows?
Well, my guess now is that you've set up a battle, and AI just heard that, and now this movie's never coming out. That's it. Probably the final battle has commenced now. Thanks a lot for that, Andrew Petiprin.
I don't think it was me. I think AI already canceled the ending when they they heard the dialogue from the last Dead Reckoning movie. That may be what we have to face.
Several things struck me in what you just said. Tom Cruise, like the man, not the character Ethan Hunt, but Tom Cruise, the man. He's not doing love scenes with young actresses.
That's correct. And that follows the precedent that Cary Grant had actually late in his career, where he was into his 50s and 60s, and he was still being cast as a leading man, playing against actresses who, that's always been the Hollywood system, for better or for worse, probably for worse. But, usually women are not cast as leading ladies when they get past a certain age, unfortunately. And so, so Cary Grant just decided he thought it would be unseemly for him as a kind of father, even a grandfather maybe at that point, to be, he had a lot of wives. He had a funny life. But anyway, he didn't want to do love scenes anymore with young actresses. And so that's what happened. Tom Cruise has followed the same path, and good on him. I think that it really comes through in what you watch on the screen. It doesn't mean that there aren't kind of moments between him and female co-stars where there's clearly attraction or something like that. There is, but it sets a different message, I think, to the world to say, I'm not gonna do the same old love scenes I did when I was in my 20s and 30s.
I think that's great, actually. I hadn't heard that at all, and I'm impressed with it. It seems like a grown-up decision to make. Mm-hmm. And one thing I like about Tom Cruise, and I think of course, there's a million criticisms of Tom Cruise, and I have not bothered to investigate, and I don't know that much about him. But one thing I like about him is and we've talked about this before, he seems to like to make a good movie. Like he's a craftsman. It seems like a vocation for him. Like, this is important. He's not just trying to make. He's not in any of the Marvel movies. He's not. But he's got a slightly different aesthetic than that, I think. I don't think he fits in the Marvel movies.
I think you're right. I mean, he's made a lot of big blockbuster movies, there's no doubt, in his career. But I think certainly in the Mission Impossible franchise and in some of the other movies he's made maybe in the last 15 years or so, it's very clear to me that he really wants people to kind of go to the cinema and have that kind of experience of the magic of movies that he remembers from his childhood and that we remember, that it isn't just, splashing around in front of a big screen or a green screen, right, and manipulating like images on computers. That's okay. But we know he famously does his own stunts. And it's not to say that there's no CGI and there's no green screens in any of his movies, but he is really trying to give people an authentic experience of, if we're going to point a camera at something and tell a story, we want it to be worth it. Like, this isn't just like another experiment that we're doing in our computer lab, right? Like, we're actually trying to go out somewhere interesting and look at something interesting and tell an interesting story. I think the Mission Impossible movies exceed expectations in that regard. But
your deeper attraction to these movies is that they actually do have a moral message, and it seems to me that the moral message is one of the value of human life. And I remember that Bishop Barron did a kind of famous review of The Martian, where he talked about what was so great about The Martian was, this is what we believe about human life. Like this, if you want to know, he didn't say it this way, but if you want to know what the Christian ethic is regarding human life, the whole world comes together to save one person. That's how valuable a human life is. And I feel like there's some of that in Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever they're saving the world in those Mission Impossible movies, it's always via saving someone they love or care about. I mean, like I said before, these are movies kind of about friendship. They're about, they're about caring for others, and not just sort of in an abstract way, like people out there, which is unfortunately kind of the message that we get from a lot of secular moralizing. Like there's always somebody out there we're supposed to be caring about, which is true. But we only learn how to do that because we care deeply about the people who are right here, who are around us. So Tom Cruise almost always ends up saving the whole world because he has to like save his friend from blowing up or something like that, right? Now this time around, supposedly he's going to go find this, this AI-controlled submarine, and but I have a feeling that he's going to save his friends a lot along the way, and maybe they'll save him too. They trust each other. That's kind of a beautiful thing. He's not a loner. He works with other people, even if he's somewhat off the grid.
Anything else you're looking forward to? Because we're getting near the end here. In the year 2025, anything else that you in your mind you're like, this one, I'm looking forward to coming out?
There's rumors of new movies maybe coming out from directors that I like. Wes Anderson,
the Untitled
Tarantino.
Wes Anderson Project, it's currently called.
That's right. It's always called that. I'm sort of hoping. I liked his last movie, the Asteroid City. I thought it was fine, but he hasn't quite recaptured the magic of some of the movies that I really, really love, like the Royal Tenenbaums or Rushmore. So who knows? Maybe we'll get a good movie from Wes Anderson in the new year. I'm just going to be on the lookout. Who knows? Maybe there will be another Japanese toilet cleaner movie or something like that. No doubt. That'll be the kind of movie that grips me.
Would you come on and tell us about it if that were to happen?
I would be clamoring to get on.
Because that is kind of, I think you made a good point in that there is this thing of discovery that the movies that you hear about are not likely to be the movies that you're really going to value in the coming year. Because in the last year, the movies that you heard were coming out, they didn't turn out to meet their promises. But then you had these surprises like The Heretic and The Beast and Perfect Day. These were not huge, big budget movies. As a matter of fact, even as you spoke about them on the show, probably most people were thinking, I've actually never heard of that movie.
Yeah.
So we need you to go out there. That's what we need you to be, our intrepid reporter back from the world of the movies.
I'm happy to do that. And then when I review these things and put them up and then come on your show, I love the idea. I want people to love cinema. I think it's an important art form. I think the church thinks it's an important art form. The church has always been interested in art. There's no doubt about that. And one of the beautiful things about the Vatican Film List is the church saying, 100 years after the motion picture made its first splash, is saying, we've come a long way with this art form. And we're not just interested in condemning bad movies anymore. We're interested in elevating and putting onto people's radar and getting people's attention for the way in which this medium can really be good for their souls. And, art doesn't always just have to serve the purpose of, hey, here's a movie about Jesus or here's a movie about Mary. I mean, movies about human beings. You put your finger on it before about the way Tom Cruise makes movies. Like, we want to see people, being human. It's good. It's good for us to see that and to experience that, especially in this world where so much of what we do is being either kind of replaced by or aided by technology, and the way that we move around in the world is so different than it once was. Oddly enough, cinema, which is a relatively new art form that certainly has a lot to thank for, with technological innovation, is still a way which I think allows us to kind of engage deeply with our humanity. Even though it's using technology, pointing these cameras at things and using computers to edit them, I think we can have a deeper experience of humanity, which I think inevitably leads us to these bigger questions about who God is and why we're here.
Amen. Amen. I can't wait. Well, if the AI allows us, we'll do summer movies with you. Once I know the AI will be taking over soon, but if we can get permission from the AI overlords, we'll have you back on. I love your Catholic way, your Christian way of looking at movies. And like even that suggestion of the Wim Wenders movie, like you said, it doesn't just have to be. There's nothing wrong with a movie about a specifically Christian or Catholic topic, but a movie that's about humanity is a movie that a Christian can value. And Andrew Petiprin, I'm very grateful. Thanks for taking the 2 hours with us.
It's been my pleasure, Cy. Thank you.
All right. If the AI allows, we'll see you again. Check out Andrew's work at andrewpetiprin.com. Get the book, Popcorn with the Pope, or find him where he's doing a million things. You'll see him. You'll run into him. We'll see you next time, God willing, right here. Catholic Answers Live.